There we go.
Hey, what's up, Shining Otaku? It's Cloud9 here today,
Oh,
Yeah.
Ro Higashi.
and and welcome to Shining Spotlight today, guys. Today we have a very special interview. We have amazing creative in the industry, one who's been around the convention scene for years. She has studied manga in Japan and has been going. She has done like an online series known as Half of the Crown. She has also previously been on known in YouTube as Shot Anime. For those of you who are like into anime reviews, like myself, today we welcome Ro Higashi.
Welcome,
Hi,
Ro.
everybody.
Yeah, so I'm really happy, that you came on the day. Definitely this is something that I think is interesting because like I said, I did used to watch your videos like quite a bit, back in the day in the YouTube days.
Oh,
Uh, but definitely the thing that I really want to talk about the most today, of course, is your project Half of the Crown, or Half of the Crown. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Now, before we really jump into this and just dive right into this, I want to say for anybody who's watching this, go ahead and share this video, spread this, let's make this blow up, and let's really shine a light on Ro Higashi.
hi, Patrice.
It looks like we got a comment here from Patrice. Hi,
Yes,
Ro.
my friend. Hi, Steve.
And then Steve as well. Okay. All right. Now let's just jump into this. So can you tell us a bit about Half of the Crown? Can you summarize the story for us a bit?
So, Half of the Crown, I've actually redone this comic many times. This is the comic that I've been trying to do for the past 10 to 15 years, and it's gone through several versions. And I felt like that I was trying to make this version that was kind of not authentic to my life and my life experiences and my friends' life experiences, because originally, about 10 years ago, when I was attending Manga School in Japan, it was my intent to stay there and to work for making a comic for a Japanese audience. And so it's been 10 years here now, and it's very clear that we'll probably stay stateside. And I realized the disconnect that I was having for Half of the Crown was that I was trying to make something for a Japanese audience still, when I myself am not Japanese, and I have a very diverse group of friends, and I just felt like, okay, maybe this is the reason why I keep restarting it and why something is not connecting. And so I did a complete revamp, and I started to kind of open up my, options to webcomics. And then I saw what Webtoon was doing, and I realized a big part of time suck for me in terms of art-wise, in terms of sequential comics, is trying to come up with the layout. And I think I'm okay at conveying movement and things like that. But with the way that Webtoon had it, where you just scroll up, it really, I guess, made it a lot easier for me, because then I didn't have to think so much about how to do the panel layout and things. And I could just do panel by panel and just kind of take it one panel at a time. And so I just focused on that. And then I also had one of the writers for one of my friend's comic. My friend's comic is called Aegis Omegas online, and the artist for that is Matt Johnson. And the writer for that comic is Hugo Damas. I hope I'm not pronouncing your name incorrectly, Hugo. And Hugo actually went through my script for the first few chapters, and he kind of nitpicked it, and he was amazing at it. Like, I'd say about 98% of the feedback he gave for me really helps take it to the next level. So, because writing, I think a lot of the times with past versions, I was kind of too on the nose. And so for me, I feel like Half of the Crown is a comic that has been basically 15 years in the making. The point of the story has not changed very much, but the delivery has taken a lot of, I guess, journeys to deliver correctly. And so that's the version that you see right now.
So would you say this is your magnum opus then?
Kind of. I feel like after I finish this comic, I'm not sure what I'll do after. If that makes sense. Yeah.
I see. So didn't you have a few other like story ideas? I remember like a while back, I even noticed it's just something like small. I remember you had like a comic you were doing like small little updates on called Tonic.
Yes. So Tonic was actually an older version of Half of the Crown.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And so the characters in Tonic were all, again, supposed to be all Japanese kids. And then so I just kind of, if you take all of the characters that you see in Tonic and you actually like put them side by side with all of the revamped characters for Half of the Crown, you'll see how everybody just basically changed from head to toe. And so but in terms of gender, like all of the characters are still kind of the same gender, and it's just still kind of the same thing where the girl ends up like tutoring the guy, right? It's again like the delivery of the story, and then also the characters. I did not map out a script at all in the versions for Tonic, and it showed. And so that was one of the things that I was really stubborn about doing. I just would draw without really realizing what they're talking about. And I realized a lot of that was because I had a lot of insecurity about speaking about my own voice and stuff. I had this issue where like I feel like if I control them too much or put too much of my own ego into it, that it was like could come off annoying. And so it took me a long time to realize like that's not the case. Like it just kind of depends on how you're delivering that, if you do happen to put your own voice into it. And I think that's why I was able to do a script for Half of the Crown, whereas previously for versions of Tonic, there's been like 9 versions. I'm not even kidding. I was not able to do that because it was just so uncomfortable for me.
I see. No, definitely. It sounds like I'm glad that you actually put a lot into the writing aspect of it, because I feel like a lot of creators out there, they just think, okay, I'm just going to draw something, really cool, something that I've seen before, like they may have a series that they're a fan of, and they end up basically just making a fan-made version of whatever it is that they like, and not really, like you said, putting your own voice into it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like how you're basically touching on originality here based off of experience. That's everything we've been about.
Yeah, I actually was very lucky that a lot of creators really, really helped me, like even when I didn't even ask for it. So I've just been very privileged that a lot of people that are working in the industry saw what I was doing, and they saw that I needed help, and they reached out to me. Alex Mayday, who's a comic writer, also sent me a couple of things to help me learn how to do like choreographed fighting, how to write really good choreographed fight scenes and stuff. Because even though I have a lot of friends who do martial arts and I ask for their help at times, there's a difference between being able to do martial arts and being able to choreograph a good fight scene, right? And so like a lot of the times, like they would help me out and get me familiarized with a bunch of different moves, but how that translates into the characters, especially with their personalities and everything like that, proved to be really difficult. So Alex Mayday helped me with that. Also, there was another like artist slash writer in the American comic book industry that had come out with like a comic called Something Terrible. And that dealt with a lot of things in his own life and a lot of difficult topics. And I actually emailed him, not expecting a response, saying like, hey, are you like, how did you do that? Like, did a lot of people kind of give you pushback for, trying to be authentic with your material? And he just responded with, if not you, then who else? If not now, then when? And then also my friend who is currently writing a light novel, his internet handle is Sasuke Dracon. He was actually a YouTube reviewer as well. He helped introduce me to a book called The Anatomy of Story, which is a really good book, and it kind of like touches on like what actually gets people to be involved in the story. The Anatomy of Story. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of that one.
Then of course there's the other comic book called like the How to Make Comics by Scott McCloud. There's also that.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
But the Anatomy of Story is by John Truby. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see it here now. I'm gonna have to save this one for myself for later.
Yeah, it's really cheap and it's a really fast read. It was a fun read. And I don't really like to read much unless it's like articles or something short or whatever. And that was a pretty easy one. So.
Nice. No, I mean, I'm all of this sounds really fascinating to me. In fact, your whole story, I know you, of course you've said it, and I know that you've said it actually in one of your previous interviews with Merlin. I can't even remember his whole YouTube name, but
Merlin the Mighty.
Yeah, Merlin the Mighty.
Yeah,
And I remember,
cool.
you stated how, you went to manga school, while you were in Japan, because you first went there as like or I guess you used your linguistics background
Yeah,
and actually taught English over in Japan.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, I see. So, how is it actually like learning manga in Japan, like in the manga school?
Um, so I think people are able to stomach this information now. I know at the time that a lot of people really upset to hear what I had to say, especially during the time that Merlin did that interview still. Um, they will not coddle you if you do not speak Japanese, if you don't have some sort of fluency in it. And they will not care that you're a foreigner, that you're not Japanese, because they got people from Thailand, from South Korea, from China coming in all the time. And they study there, and then they go back to their own countries and work in their studios there. So if they're cutting it and it's easy for them to have in class, if it's easy for them to have those foreigners in class, you're really competing against those guys in terms of like how you're viewed. They will not cut you slack just because you're from outside of the country. And I feel like that's the first thing I need people to understand. Like a lot of people think that they'll go and that like their classmates will welcome them and, they'll teach them Japanese and kind of give them a handicap, but that doesn't exist. Not over there. It's a very homogenous society. I'd say like my first few months there, I had like very basic Japanese skill at the time, and I couldn't, I didn't have enough language skill at the time to describe exactly what kind of haircut I wanted. I thought if I just had a picture, like it would suffice. And I remember like walking by in front of this salon. It was like owned by like, it was more like a barbershop, but it was owned by an older couple, and they saw that I was kind of like loitering outside. And so they motioned for me to come inside, and they came inside and they're like, what kind of haircut do you want? And I showed, a picture that I had on like a flip phone, right? Mm-hmm. And then they just said, wait, are you not Japanese? And I said, I'm not. And they said, and then they already had put, the stuff around my shoulders, and they actually took it off, and they're like, we can't, this place is not for you, is what they told me.
Oh, dang. Okay.
And they said, you need to go somewhere else. And I was like,
were you confused when you heard that? Like when they said that?
I mean, I understood. So my hearing at the time was good enough to where like, it was just my speaking, because I had to get over being really, really shy and having a really weird accent while I was speaking.
So no mo ichido kudasai, like,
Oh, so yeah, it was a lot of that. So, but Japan is very different now, I heard. Like a lot of my friends that go there now, there's some Japanese people that are really like, they're with it. Like they're becoming more woke, and, they're learning more about like other cultures and stuff and embracing them. But you still have like lots of Japanese people who are huge stereotypical negative Trump fans. Like, yeah, so there's still kind of like that conservative culture over there. I don't know, should I go into that on what happened from 2008? Like kind of,
Sure, I mean, we're all here.
Okay, sure. Right. So I was there from year 2006 to 2009. And in 2008, what happened is that the Japanese government had lost 150,000 pensions. I just lost them. And they claim it's because they were trying to digitize all of the information, because Japan is still kind of like a paper-based society. So for what I mean by that is if you go to the hospital and they pull up your file, they will literally go up to a wall of paper files and find your name and take it out. They don't have like a computer. Like there's still a lot of hospital systems that even now that are like that, but at that time, wow, like that was really normal. And so they started to take all of those paper documents and, enter them into a system. And they said because of human error that 150,000, which is such a clean round number, due to human error of entering that information, they had lost it.
Wow. So
you suddenly had a bunch of senior citizens in Japan that just had no pension at all.
That's crazy. Like,
and they set up like
Japan's like got like probably like a bigger senior population than like most
do.
countries. So,
So
I'm thinking,
understandably, a lot of the people were really mad. Now they did give kind of a way for people to maybe find their pension, like, information. Luckily, there was a lot of senior citizens who did keep copies of their own papers. And so they did set up stations like in different wards or areas in each ward where you could go and like talk to them and show them the paper and try to work it out and try to like revive some of that information. But of course, if you didn't keep all of those papers, you were kind of out of luck, right? And so the government was not very popular at that time. So what they did is they decided to crack down on all of the Brazilian citizens living in Japan there by basically saying, oh, all the Brazilians here are the cause of all the crime and everything, and because they're foreigners and stuff. So we're going to make up this new rule that all factories and stuff were supposed to have, and we're going to go to each factory and shut them all down, and then basically deport all of the Brazilians. And when they deported the Brazilians, they made them sign this paper that said their next of kin, like 2 generations, were also banned and not allowed back in Japan.
Oh, wow.
And so you had a lot of Brazilian kids.
What year was this again?
2008. So you had a lot of Brazilian kids who lived there. They were born and raised in Japan. A lot of them spoke Japanese and not Portuguese. And they were all being deported.
Wow.
And the government did that to just basically distract them from that pension thing.
That's still crazy though. Like, so like, did they ever like, I mean, at this point, I mean, it's been more than 10 years. Has anybody like kind of like, tried to repeal that at all, or, try to get people to like,
so what happens now in current Japan is about, I think 4 or 5 years ago, they realized because they deported so many Brazilians, and then a lot of the lower pay wage, like factory jobs, like, Japanese people were not willing to do. They're like, fuck, what do we do? Because now there's nobody going to work in our factories. So what they did is they passed this initiative where they would give like other foreigners, like Vietnamese people and people from Thailand and other places, like 4 or 5 year visas to work in Japan legally, and usually in the factories. And I'm talking about like Vietnamese people that have like a degree and everything. And so then they were brought in. And then at the same time, Trump was elected. So you had this kind of far right Japanese culture that was just kind of really riding on that like stereotypical negative Trump fan base or whatever. And then they were saying like, oh, like I think one of my friends in Japan, she's actually in the chat right now, Neko-chan Karate. She received, she's a foreigner married to a Japanese national living in Japan too. And they received a paper that said like, oh, all the foreigners are taking our jobs. And it's like, no, there weren't enough Japanese people to do this. So they called them in. So this narrative that even now that they're trying to sell, the far right in Japan is trying to sell that all the foreigners are coming in to take people's jobs. It's like, no. Japanese government brought them in because they kicked out too many and there was a shortage. And now they're bringing them in illegally and y'all are still mad. Like, it's just...
I mean, I know Japan's always been said, like people say that it's xenophobic, but I didn't know that was a current thing, that it actually was going on.
It's not like, I'm gonna say that like it's not your run-of-the-mill Japanese person. It really isn't. A lot of them are, I'd say 80% of them are politically agnostic, where they understand that exists, but having opinions about it, like they don't understand why they should have one, And they're of the mindset of like, well, as long as they respect Japan and they live here respectfully, like who cares, I think a good number of them are, but you do have like really far right ideological people living there too. So it's this whole other thing. So I didn't experience like, luckily, a ton of that. I did experience microaggressions because my parents are of Philippine descent. And so I obviously my face doesn't present as a Japanese person. And so a lot of people would ask if my husband had met me at a pub. And I know that a lot of the times, like a pub doesn't really mean anything here in the States, but a pub in Japan is basically usually has like a negative.
Well, I can already guess just based on the way you're putting it that I'm like, that's why I'm like, that's messed up. But like,
because there are Philippine pubs where, you you go to meet Filipino women and they sing and dance for you. And it's basically like do you know what a kyabakura is?
Say it one more time for me.
Kyabakura, it's a hostess bar.
No, I don't. Okay, I know what a hostess bar is.
Yeah, hostess bar is like you go in and like the girls will drink with you and laugh with you, and they're usually really pretty and all dolled up, and you basically pay for all the alcohol for the girl and you, and they give you like entertainment.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with
so Philippine pubs are like the Philippine version of that in Japan.
Got it.
And so that's why whenever anyone asks me if me and my husband met at a pub, that's what that would mean, is that they think that he went to a Philippine pub, picked me up, bought me, and then now I'm married to him.
Oh my goodness. Like, I know you had to kind of like give them like the side eye or something. Like, did you just say that?
So I have to, sadly, just say, no, I am, the exact words I would use is just like, yeah, Philippine ke America din des, which means like I'm Filipino American. I would always have to say those two, or else I'd start getting the pub questions. And that was back in 2008. I know that there are certainly Japanese people now that would know better and would not ask that. But, you still have remnants of that. It's only been like, almost 10 years ago. So.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
10 years ago in the terms of the whole grand scheme of like life, it's not that long ago, if you think about it. So,
yeah.
Even though it is and it isn't, but so I'm curious, like with all this COVID-19 stuff going on, like how do you feel how is this affecting you, like as far as an artist? I'm sure it's got to be in like multiple ways.
Like this move, and then also, the move, because we just moved into a new place, and then also I got 2 kids. One is 10, and the other one is 6, and they're both basically in 2 full-time different schools because they go to something called Hoshuko, which is a Japanese Saturday school, and they learn everything that a native kid would learn in Japan, but in that one day,
is that
and then
like
they have
thing as cram school.
No. So basically, if they complete the year of Hoshuko, it's equivalent to completing the year in Japan. So they have 1 day of instruction, and then the rest of the week they have for homework that they would have learned in school in Japan. So they do that on top of the American school that they have. So they have their full-time, both Japanese and American school. And I know in different states, like depending on the state, there's not a lot of homework and stuff, but in our area, at least Texas has been very good about, distributing all of the classes, online classes, and all of the work. So the kids are very, very busy. And so usually during the time that they're at school, I would be arting really, really hard. But now that they're at home, that's kind of cutting into my hard time at the moment. But I'm hoping it's just kind of 1 more month of this whole school thing and kind of trying to get them to be a little bit more independent about a lot of things. So my youngest, I can help her out with her Hoshuko homework and stuff because she's 6, and I at least, have enough language skill to help her out properly with that. But for my 10-year-old, she's in 5th grade Japanese school right now. And so they're learning about like politics and stuff like that. And that's kind of way over, that's my pay grade. And so my husband's trying to take care of that. And so it's just been crazy because we both have been working from home and then also trying to kind of juggle their stuff too. And they're also in like this extracurricular, like advanced class thing too, in which they had to do presentations and stuff for. So that's been a little stressful because then if they get stressed out, like instead of stressing out at school, they're stressing out at home.
Right.
So, me and my husband, we were teachers in Japan too. But we've just been out of it. It's been 10 years. So we're just kind of trying to get back into the swing of it and trying to do it again. So,
no, that's interesting.
How about you guys? Like, what has it been for you guys? You guys just been kind of the same?
I mean,
same thing, trying to figure it out.
honestly,
Normal.
just it's been easy, I guess. Well, not easy. I don't want to say easy. Like, make it I mean, aside from
Nico's
rocking
like,
a Corona look, because this is not what I would be rolling with right now. I would
it
be a
looks
little bit.
good. I think you look good. Yeah.
It's definitely not what he was going for.
But
But yeah, it's I should have put it. I mean, we've been under a lockdown, and it's kind of made certain necessities a bit of a challenge, like grocery shopping and whatnot. Keeping stock in the essentials when everybody keeps buying up for whatever reason, tissue and wet wipes and stuff, and all the disinfectants. But aside from that, I've been living it up here, keeping all my nutrients up. I actually ended up transitioning into being a vegetarian during the whole thing.
Congratulations.
So there's that.
A lot of work, but that's
and
good.
he's building a new computer, so I guess you.
Yeah. I think for the I guess geeky / nerdy community, this isn't really anything new for us.
Oh, no, it's like I can adapt. I mean, I'm used to going out, to for example, conventions, which I'm sure, obviously, you've been, all around the different conventions and such. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, it sucks that Free Comic Book Day is like this was supposed to be the day for that.
It's supposed to be your time, and then it's not. It's weird. I was supposed to be at this convention in Seattle, SakuraCon, because the mascot. The 2020 mascot was my design, and so I went able. And I was really excited about it. Luckily, they're gonna keep the mascot until they actually have an event. I hope. Is what they told me anyway. But so I was thinking of So I was thinking of making something with that, with the mascot, just to kind of help people tide over. But at the same time, I don't know exactly what I'm allowed to be doing, because I'm thinking of making something like kind of a pinup book of the character and her turtle. But I don't know if that's family friendly at the same time. So I'm kind of in this weird limbo stage where I'm like, should I start transitioning to smut or? And I don't know, SakuraCon is supposed to be a family friendly thing too. So, I mean, I can sell the character that way, but I can't just attach the convention name to it at all. So
it looks like Kiwa had a comment about that. I believe they were commenting on the image itself, and it was gorgeous. I'm glad they're keeping it.
Yeah, thank you, Kiwa.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. So I also wanted to ask you this, actually. So with your kids being home, of course, I'm sure they've seen you drawing over the years and stuff. Do they have any of them taken an interest into it? And if so, have you decided, you know what, I'm gonna take them under my wing, have them ink my pages and
so that's the hard part, is that both of my kids are very competitive, especially the oldest one. And she will not take any instruction that I have on anything, which is fine as long as she figures it out on her own. But I kind of feel bad because she has this thing where if she can't draw it exactly how I can draw it, then she shouldn't even try. Which, and so I, from a very young age, I didn't know how to cultivate that with her, because I also didn't want to be that stereotypical tiger parent, that was you do what I tell you to do. And, and, I didn't want to make it seem that I was trying to make her live out my art dreams or whatever. So I tried to just let it go unless she asked me for stuff, but because of how competitive she is, she never asked me for anything. And she kind of lost interest. I think I'd say she's 10 now. So I'd say she lost interest about age 7 or 6. But she loves writing. So she actually writes in her free time, and she does a lot of short stories. She's really into fantasy, and she eats up fantasy books, probably maybe one a week. She loves Wings of Fire and that kind of thing. So she does that. I've been trying to get her to try to draw dragons and stuff. She's been doing a little bit more of that, and that's kind of out of my element, but whatever keeps you connected to the kids. And my youngest,
well, you're not big on drawing dragons, or they're
I'll draw dragons, and I did draw the latest drawing that I had for a dragon was for a board game that I was working on called Chibi Heroes, which was supposed to come out in February, but then the whole COVID thing happened. So I think the creator is just waiting until it calms down before he actually releases it. But my youngest is hell-bent on wanting to be an artist too. So, but at the same time, she also doesn't want to take instruction from me.
They're going to choose their own path.
The rebellious one that ultimately will be your successor.
Hi, Renita.
Oh man, that's so funny.
Yeah, so no, I would love to help them. That's kind of what I hope our kids can take away from me and my husband, is that we may not know everything, but if there's a way that we can help guide them towards what they want and stuff, like, we are for that. We're totally supportive. My youngest said she wants to be an artist. I feel like maybe putting her in some online art classes might help. But she's also very, I guess, how do you explain it in English? In Japanese, they call it hitomishiri. And in English, I guess they would translate it as takes a while to open up, but that's a little bit more like they're very self-conscious. I think that's part of the meaning too. And my oldest is very like kind of out there and, kind of brave, also puts her foot in her mouth a lot, but that's part of her charm. And the youngest, I think, like, she's so sensitive about her drawings. So if I even try to correct anything, like, there's tears will well up, like Ghibli tears, really small. And so the tears look like really huge and stuff. And so I realized, like, okay, if she really wants to do this art thing, she's probably going to have to, like, be a mentee under someone else, not me. Because I think it's like, whatever mom has to say is too much. For her tiny heart, yeah.
It'd be like that sometimes. Like, I think about like my dad, when he used to try to teach me martial arts, it was the same thing. I didn't want him to, like, really, I mean, not that I didn't want him to show me anything, but if, like, I didn't want to be corrected by my dad. I was like, no, I got it.
Yeah. So, like, I'm trying to understand that. Like, I'm not, at first, I think with my first one, I was really, like, hurt by it. I was like, man, But with my second one, I think I'm just waiting for, I guess, the right time to just, hopefully maybe for summer, I'll sign her up for some online art classes or something that's, like, age appropriate for her. But for right now, it's clearly not going to be me that will be mentoring her. And I'm okay with that, as long as I can help her.
Okay. You never know. Later on, she might pick up your techniques. Once she.
She'll probably, honestly, though, like, since 3 years old, she'll draw things, and I'll be like, wow, And so, if she does keep up with that, I have a feeling she'll kick my ass by the time she's 14 or so. So I give it, another 8 years, and then that's it. She'll just be like, whatever, mom, I draw better than you, and I'll be like, yeah, you too. It'll be fine. They start really young now. That's why. There's a lot of 18-year-olds that totally draw me under the table, and I will totally admit that. I will admire them like everybody else.
Yeah, you got some prodigies out there.
Yeah.
It actually makes me think about something. What who actually are your, like, art influences? I know I've heard you say,
before you go on with that, I want to get caught up on the comment section here, since we're already a little past the 30-minute marker.
Okay.
I know we just touched on Renita and Kiwa. Thank you guys for coming in. Just kind of going back here, the Patrice, she did mention your voice was heard clearly earlier. Zio, he said, glad to hear the book helped you out. I think he was talking about the anatomy of the anatomy of story earlier.
Yeah.
Song Yu, thank you for coming in. Fee Rochan, yay, she was able to make it. Thank you for stopping by. Neko-chan, we touched on you as well. They were over there nodding at I forget which statement it was, but their agreement with something said.
2008 stuff, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, that was implying the prostitution part of things.
The pub, that was during the pub comments, yeah.
And Kiwa agree on the kids thing. Sean Tucker, thank you for stopping by. Great interview so far, loving it. Jordan Wolf, Yeah, I feel like it's the same when teaching family to drive. LOL, they'd rather go driving school than learn from their parents.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
That's true. Yeah, my parents were definitely the nervous ones. Like as soon as I put my foot on the brake gently, it's like, you're going to kill us, and I'm like, oh. It's a very nervous driver.
Oh my goodness. But in any case, yeah, I wanted to touch on some of your I guess your stylings of your art actually, and I had a few images of your work, of course. You know, this actually is from your half of the crown.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we have images not from half the crown. Actually, I think both of them, all of them are actually. There were some of the images that really stood out to me. Like I like this one a lot because I feel like the colors like contrasted really well like, with the background. But yeah, what are some of your like I guess who are your influences both art wise and writing wise?
Ooh.
I know
Oh.
Oda. I believe Oda's one of your favorites, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yes. So, gosh, there's so many. I'm just gonna list off just 3 off of the top of my head, and then I'll have you guys choose which one you want to talk about. Oda, like you talked about, Mazukazu Katsura was a huge one for me. And then I'd say storytelling wise, the writer for Hunter x Hunter.
oh,
Togashi.
Togashi. I
Yeah.
swear. Oh my goodness, like
And
Togashi.
then, yeah, and then I'd say, as for like American comics, I really enjoyed Y the Last Man, and I guess, what is it? Was it called Fairy Tale?
Oh, why Last Man? Did Robert Kirkman do that one, or I'm trying to think of who did?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm terrible with names, but I read the entire thing, the entire series. It was great. I think the stories that I think make me think about them after are usually the one that stays with me. And so Hunter x Hunter is one of those big ones where I still, will sit there, I'll be washing dishes or something, and it will still kind of stick with me, and just because I'm just so impressed about how this arc was presented and these character things. I'm recently, for recent work, I'm very impressed with, I'm forgetting the name. There's a lot of Netflix stuff that was happening recently. Got me.
Thank you. One of the comments actually said who did the comic you were mentioning. Brian K. Vaughan actually did that.
Thank you,
according to Steve.
But yeah, I'm really bad with names. I'm quite dyslexic, so names are, terrible.
I'm like, that's bad.
I'm sure. Trust me, you're not worse than me when it comes to names. I'm usually writing all of it down.
Yeah, but I guess first one I'd like to talk about for Oda. As for writing, like I mentioned, in Japan, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. There's actually a huge censorship problem in Japan. In terms of having political commentary of any sort, or even political commentary about Japan's opinion or Japanese citizens' opinion about other countries, like even that is censored to a point.
I noticed that. When do you think that started?
It's been there.
It's been there because I could have sworn like the folks like Tezuka, what is his name? Tezuka.
Osamu Tezuka.
Yeah, Osamu Tezuka and
so
Otomo got away with that.
One of the first ones to kind of make the political commentary by disguising it as character arcs. And Oda does the same thing. So if you think about it, like the time where they introduced the Smile Islands, that was around the same time that the Fukushima meltdown thing happened. And all this other stuff. I think Togashi did the same thing with the Chimera Ant arc. Obviously, that place was supposed to be North Korea and things, and so it's. I feel like that they were very good about being able to talk about that without actually talking about it, and so that was kind of one loophole around the censorship that I think a lot of people don't realize that they were doing. So I deeply appreciate them for that. I really like that Oda's art. A lot of people rip on the art, but it's actually quite genius. It's the only Japanese comic that I have seen that really it takes as much. Sorry, let me rewind a little bit. For American comics, they have a lot more speech bubbles, more than actual movement, and the speech bubbles will imply the movement as you read on. Mm-hmm. And Japanese comics will just have more panels that portray movement and less speech bubbles per panel. And Oda is one of the only Japanese comic artists that kind of goes against all of that. And he takes both the American style of paneling and Japanese and puts it together. And then at the same time, the movement in between each panel, if you actually look, especially his most recent stuff, it moves like a Monet painting. So you know exactly where to go because he already set it up, the design of each panel. So your eye knows where to look. Even if the paneling looks crazy and unconventional, you still know where to go. So I think that's pretty genius. I would never be able to do anything like that.
So, I don't know. You should never doubt your own ability. Seriously, like I'm telling you, like I'm looking at your work. It's great, So definitely don't doubt your own ability.
I'm kind of trying to learn how to have more confidence, but I believe in you who believes in me, so it helps.
I got what do you call that anime? I forget the name of it right now. The drill. Don't tell me. Okay. I don't know why it's escaping me. I swear things escape me when I have to pull it out of nowhere.
Cue the Jeopardy theme.
You know what? Just go ahead and say it. We'll be in here forever.
The guy that looks like he's from Promare.
Yeah, I know the character that said it was Kamina. I don't know why I can't say it right now. Studio Trigger did the anime. Why is it that? Let me see here. Oh man, I don't know why I cannot think of it. Oh well, forget it. We'll come back to it.
Everyone knows.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Actually no. This is actually a good question for you. Mentioning Oda. If Oda actually said to you, let's say you met Oda, right? Gurren Lagann. Somebody said it. Gurren Lagann.
There you go.
Okay. If Oda came to you and said, "Hey, I want you to train under me. I want you to be like an assistant to me." How would you make the best of that? And actually, first off, would you do it? And would you make the best of it? How would you go about it?
You would never ask me. I mean, I think if I were still in Japan and I was trying to get serialized in Japan and he asked me, I would probably drop everything and do it in a heartbeat. It's a once in a million lifetime thing. I'm pretty sure my family would be totally on board with it. It also depends too. If my children were very, very small, I'd probably, put my children first and stuff. My youngest is now 6 and they're getting more independent. So if it was at this point of my life, I would totally jump into it. I'd be like, yep, I'm all in, let's do it. I'll live in the studio. I'll be gross, never shower. I'll do all of that. Just because I think Oda is one of those living treasures still, there's a reason why his comic is the most sold or number one sold comic in the entire world. It's because it transcends cultures. It's timeless. It will probably last up until our kids,
I think it's actually the most sold graphic novel of all time, in terms of just period.
Yeah. And that's everywhere. That's everywhere in every country. So
yeah, it's amazing. Now I do love your take on Oda in this sense, because that was a little bit more than I was even aware of. But I hear a lot about Oda and Togashi a lot. I actually am a little more curious about your influence with Mazukata.
Oh, okay. So when I was little, this is back when Seattle was just really artsy and was still kind of in the, the grunge scene was really, really big. And I was 8, 9, 10, right? And loved Dragon Ball. Loved it, right? I just needed to absorb anything of it. I remember being 6 or 7, wanting to be Gohan. I just wanted to abandon my parents.
Yes,
so I could have no parent anyway.
Yes. I'm telling you.
I remember feeling that so bad. I remember just wanting to just be him, and that's it. I felt like if I was Gohan, then everything in my life was just, the thing that really touched me with a lot of Akira Toriyama's work is that it was always so consistent, and there was just something really comforting in knowing that like the characters look the same in each panel, and you know that their hair was going to look like this when they get Super Saiyan and everything, and it was such a good build up for me. So I would go to the local Kinokuniya store in Seattle. And this is back when the comics were on the second floor of Oejimaya, and like the Kinokuniya store would be like on this small second story place in Oejimaya, back when it was like in the old building in Seattle. And I remember going up there and just kind of trying to inhale as much comics as I could. And if you get comics back at the Kinokuniya, like this is like, we're talking 1990s, right? So they were like maybe $4 or $5 each. So I remember saving my lunch money, like, and making sure that I had about like $30 or $40 each time, and just spending them on like as much Dragon Ball Tankobons as I could get. And if the latest Dragon Ball one wasn't out, or if they didn't have like a volume that I was looking for, I started to look elsewhere. And the art that really caught my eye was Masakazu Katsura's art. And the comic that he had out at the time was called Eyes. And that was an ecchi comic. But the cover just totally, it struck me. I loved the way that the eyes looked. It was just kind of like that 90s Japanese aesthetic where like, the nose was like disappeared and you just focused on the eyes and everything. And I loved that kind of realism that he had, where whenever he wrote, like just drew a leg, it wouldn't just be like two lines. It would just be like curves, like he was really into that. And then to me, that was just kind of like, a god tier skill of knowing where to put all of those curves and everything. And I was just so obsessed with the line art. And this is 9-year-old me. And it wasn't even a sexual thing for me. It's an extremely ecchi comic, like really ecchi. I don't think they could have that level of ecchi nowadays, It's pushing it. But I remember like just taking the comics and not really knowing what's inside, and just, putting them on the register with my Dragon Ball comics. And this was all like in Japanese and everything. And at that time I couldn't even read anything. I didn't give a shit. I just wanted it, right? And I remember the person that was like ringing me up, and he looked at the eyes and he looked at me like this 10-year-old girl, and he was like, okay. And I remember taking them home and realizing it was an ecchi comic. And at that time I was like, and then I realized, oh, but it's drawn so nice. Oh, look at that nipple. It's like, whatever. Like it just totally blew me away that it was like, oh, there's this level that you can get to with the detail of the hair and the curves on the like the female body and the male bodies. Like these guys also looked really great. And it was just, it was something that I think still stuck with me. Like even now when he does character designs for recent anime, like I can still pick it out and everything. And then so from there, I think a few years after that, the Anime America magazine came out. And through that magazine, like I started to pick up like other things that Masakazu Katsura did, like Dark Lady. It was not Dark Lady. It was like the Bat. It was because Masakazu Katsura is like obsessed with Batman. And so he made another one called like Batgirl. Not Batgirl. I forget. It was like this girl that was like a Batman version.
A girl with a Batman version.
I have all those comics too, still somewhere in those boxes. But I'm bad with names. Devil Lady. It might have been Devil Lady. I think it was Devil Lady. Let me check it up real quick. But like I remember picking that up, and then and then he also did Video Girl Eye too. And I don't know if you guys have seen that. There are some OAVs for Video Girl Eye. If you look at the animation for those, you can find them on YouTube. The animation still holds up today. And it's still one of the things that really fascinated me, because back when they did Devil Lady, or Shadow Lady, there you go, Shadow Lady. Back when they did Shadow Lady, what they did is they flipped it back then, the art. And then, because they wanted it to read the American way. And so they flipped the art, but when they did that, what I thought was super fascinating is Masakazu Katsura's art would look amazing on its original version, but as soon as they flipped it, like there was this kind of weird, it kind of looked weird a little bit. And it's still, even now, like if you look at his recent art, sometimes it doesn't work when you flip it over. There's also this other artist, I forgot what his name, but he did Turaburu.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
he did the art for that, and then before that, he did another one called Yamato Gensoki. I forgot what his name is. The artist.
What's it called? One more time.
Yamato Gensoki. And then he also did Black Cat.
Black Cat.
I really loved that artist too. I still do. He does more ecchi art now because I think that's where the money for him is at the moment. But before he did Turaburu, he did Yamato Gensoki, which was like I think only a couple of volumes, and then Black Cat had a pretty long run.
I don't think I've seen that. From what I'm looking at right here, I don't think I've ever seen this before. I've seen To Love Ru though before.
Yeah. So, but Black Cat, I loved. I was really disappointed because the anime for it really.
Okay, so you're talking about Black Cat the series. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Black Cat the anime was terrible, but the comic was amazing. I still have the comic on my desk every now and then when I'm like needing some inspiration, and I still pick it up now. So. Yeah.
I still think it's an underrated series. The anime didn't do it enough justice.
The anime was terrible. The anime was, I don't know. They just gave it to some rookie studio, I assume, or something. Yeah. And they had no idea what to do with it. It's like, because the comic was so hip and again had that consistency of each character and everything. And also I love the writing too. Like it's funny now because now that I can read it, and then I'll go back and read the stuff that I thought that they were, and I'll remember Kid B and what I thought they were saying, and then I'll read it now and be like, oh, that's what they're and stuff. And it's really great writing. And the anime, I don't know, they try to make it like a dark Pokemon or something. I have no idea. It's terrible.
Dark Pokemon.
Oh, Steve said the artist name, Kentaro Yabuki.
Ah.
So, yeah, that artist.
Nice. Yeah, I don't think I've never really dived into any of that artist's work, like really dived into it. But I mean, I'll probably check it out.
I really liked Kentaro Yabuki's work because to me, it was like the closest to Masakazu Katsura's work at that time. Because I believe when Masakazu Katsura like ended Eyes, like he didn't really do anything after that. And I kind of needed a fix. And then in came Kentaro Yabuki's art. And so I kind of used that to replace my Masakazu Katsura fix. So, yeah.
So I want to say we're coming down to the last 10 minutes of this interview, so we are getting ready to wrap up soon. But there's of course a lot more questions I have for you that I want to get to.
I'll try to keep them short. I'm sorry. I'm talking.
Oh no! I'm loving all of this right now. To be honest with you, like I'm loving everything that you're saying. Definitely. So if you will take the rest of the time for one question, that's fine.
Okay.
But I wanted to know, as far as with your character Penny, from Half of a Crown.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the design for her character?
So Penny, back when in the Tonic series, was very like throwaway Mary Sue. And the reason for that is because I decided to delve into a little bit of her character in those versions. For some reason, I had it in my head, and maybe it was just kind of the shonen manga like minds that I had back then. I felt like I had to open with a really crazy fight and then go into deeper to the characters. And so back then with the Tonic versions, that's kind of how she appeared, because I never got to that second part of the chapters where, it could delve more into her character and stuff. And so this time I decided okay, I actually need to make people understand why she has to be there and, what she's all about and her background and everything. So my design for her was two things. In 2018, I had designed a ambiguously brown character, like for Sakura-kon, their mascot, and that won first place. And I was shocked at how many people who are of a mixed background actually walked up to me and said, I never see this in anime. And I cried when I saw that the mascot was like an ambiguously brown girl. And I actually had a Blasian woman walk up to me and say, you know, I would really love it if you just put a Blasian in a comic, because it's always just a black character or something, and I don't have anything to represent me. And so I just thought, all right,
let's go.
I'll do it, right? And so and I basically have a lot of friends that also kind of asked for the same thing. And so I did that. And Penny is supposed to be, like her dad is African-American, and then her mom is supposed to be Filipino. And my oldest daughter, I think you don't really see it in my hair, but my oldest daughter has extremely crazy anime wavy hair, and she's half Filipino. And so I just thought, like, okay, I'm going to take my daughter's hair and then what everybody else was asking and just, put that in. And then I came up with how Penny is right now, which is really crazy, because once I made Penny exactly how she is now, I finally felt like this is what I was missing. Like, trying to make Penny just the Japanese character, it just didn't feel right. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I felt like I was trying to make Penny what she wasn't. And then when I finally made like Penny what she is now, I realized, oh, this is what it was supposed to be. And I was the one that was trying to keep it from happening, I don't know if that makes sense. It's going to make me sound crazy. It's so basically creativity is something that visits you, and you have to do everything that you can to entertain creativity so they stay as long as they can. And so I kind of feel like that's what happened with Penny, is that, like, her character came in and I was like, oh, okay, so what do we do with you? And then just, kind of went from there, kind of got to know my characters a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting, that sweet hairstyle came from your daughter. I was looking at it like, oh, that's impressive, actually.
Yeah, so my oldest daughter, she will like tie it back and everything, but if you actually just let it will go in all directions, just like Penny's hair. And I think it's beautiful. So I just kept it there, So.
Oh, that's nice, like have that inspiration right there.
Yeah.
That's nice. Oh man. So like, I guess, what about Issei? How did you get his design?
So Issei's design, I've always wanted him to be a Japanese guy, but I always wanted him to be mixed race Japanese. And personality wise, gosh, I hate to say this. I hope this doesn't ruin the characters for everyone. Personality wise, Issei's personality is based off of my personality, and Penny's personality is actually based off of my husband's.
That's
my husband is a very straight arrow, everything by the book, and very independent, and doesn't like taking risks, but when he does, like it's the right decision at the right time.
Is that kind of why we have like a your name type of kind of like art going
so
on
there
right
is
now?
Something that has to do with the power systems, which I haven't introduced yet. I really need to. Is that I basically based a lot of the power systems off of Judaism. During the time that I could not draw when I first had my kids, I basically bought as much books as I could from half-price books on Judaism, on Kabbalah, and everything. And so basically I used a lot of inspiration from that. I pulled a lot of things. And in Kabbalah, they have something called like the Tree of Life. And if you study the Tree of Life, it helps you bring you closer to the divine. And they believe like there's two sides of the Tree of Life. There is the maternal side and the paternal side. And one cannot exist without the other. And one cannot be stable without the other. And so that's where I really love Sense8 as well. the storytelling in Sense8 and stuff like Your Name. And so I wanted to play a lot with the whole gender role type thing, because a lot of people who know me, I am very much a tomboy or something. I'm very vulgar. I swear a lot. I'm very inappropriate. A lot of the times I'm reckless, which is how Issei is. He's very reckless and he doesn't really think ahead. And so he's very mirrors how I was a lot when I was his age, where he was just kind of like act now, think later. And Penny is very the cautious type and, you know, just kind of doesn't want to get involved with a lot of people, similar with like my husband. Not so much antisocial per se, but, you know, all of that. And I just wanted to play around with those roles because a lot of people would look at me and my husband and they would see that my husband, he's a very affectionate father, you know, and his father was also very affectionate, and it played against kind of that Japanese Asian man role of like, you know, unaffectionate and like really, you know, not saying anything to their kids and stuff. And so a lot of people see us and they're just kind of like fascinated because they're thinking, wow, like that's not, he's the more nurturing one. And then for me, I'm this kind of like, man, fuck you, you know.
they're having like a meltdown. Like, I don't understand. You're not meeting normal stereotypes that we would.
And so I kind of wanted to play with that idea with the characters as well, to be like, you know, it doesn't really matter, like girl, guy, it's just kind of who you are, and that's kind of all it is. And so that's where I had them start to like switch around and stuff. I'm going to play a lot with a lot of that, and I'm going to have a lot of fun. I would love to spoil some scenes that I have planned, but I'll just keep that to myself.
Fair enough.
All right.
I know we're out of time. I was actually a little more curious about one other character, you know, you know, best boy Eli, you know.
Oh.
I love that character. Because I related to him a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Eli, one of the other people that actually helped me write this comic, because he's actually a psychotherapist, and he lives in Seattle. And his name is Christopher Rouse, and he's one of my friends that I grew up with in my hometown. And he, a lot of the character is based kind of off of him. He's kind of all over the place, always a jokester, and always like fawning over the women, unapologetically so. And it's fine, you know. And it's weird because a lot of people just think like, oh, when you fawn over someone, it's creepy, but my guy friends who do it in that way, they're not creepy. Like there's a creepy way to do it and there's not. But a lot of people are like feeling, oh, I can't fawn over them at all or else I'll be creepy. And it's like, well, no, Eli doesn't. He's not creepy. Like he's not gonna.
There's the Brock way and then there's the other way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Eli in a nutshell.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I have to ask this because this is like, and I know you're probably about to choke me out, Nico, because you're like, we're over the time, but this is so important.
Okay.
What is your end game?
So, comics helped me grow up. They basically raised me. They are anything that conventionally what parents would be, ideally, like. That was comics for me. And I feel like that I decided when I was 8 that I was also going to draw comics to kind of pay it forward and do the same thing, hopefully, for other kids when they're also 8 or in high school or older or whatever. And so the entire comic is actually about your experiences don't actually determine the rest of your life. Your early experiences, I mean. And also I wanted a lot of kids to know that like you don't have to go through anything by yourself. That's the end game.
Nice. I like the way you put that. You know. Okay, well, I appreciate you coming on today. I want to throw this up so everybody can see. You know, make sure if you haven't checked out Half of the Crown that you go to all these social media handlebars for Ro Higashi to check out her work, read her work, share it. You know, it's definitely great. You'll have a good time with it. You know, I know I've had a good time reading through it, you know, going through, you know, all the chapters. I believe there's 9 up so far. So you'll want to make sure you do that. Also, subscribe to her, or if she still wants you to go to her Shot Anime, if she you can go there. Follow her on Twitter. She's on I don't know. Are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. I think it's Ro.Higashi. Yeah, it's up there on the thing that you just put up right now. So
okay, so all of them are right there. Also, very quick, we have a couple announcements to make, ourselves on what's coming up next. Next week, we are going to be having a interview with Comfort and Adam. Some of you guys may be familiar with them they've done the online comic The Uniques. They've also done Rainbow in the Dark. They've also published a really popular book, actually, that's been in a lot of stores, Barnes and Noble, all around, called The Complete Guide to Self-Publishing Comics. So if you're interested in knowing about that, of course, they're going to be talking with us, and they've also done Kitty Game. So you'll want to make sure, and I believe they also got they were nominated for a Harvey Award, if I believe.
That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. So they're pretty big. You want to join us for that interview? Come on board. If you're wanting to know where you can find us, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to Shining Otaku on YouTube. We're on Shining Otaku. And then also make sure that you follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching us today on Shining Spotlight, and we're going to go ahead and close out.
Catch you all later.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.